Yo. Can you hear me?
Yo. Yeah.
We're live. We are live.
Yes.
I was gonna do something. Oh, I have to do this and this and this. Let me check. Oh, wait. What? It's not delivery that I want, though. I'm gonna turn on a little bit of music right now as we're not still recording it. Say something.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so...
What up?
What up? Yeah, you can see chat probably as well. I can have it open.
I see chat.
Hello everyone. Pro streamer trying to figure out the streaming bits. I don't know why I have this. Why do I have this? Oh, I know why. Okay, be right back. Not be right back. I'm here. No, wait. Wait, what? Okay, so I gotta go to Trading Paints and update delivery. No, my editor. So, guys, the legendary, like, I'm just fixing something. The legendary
Andrew,
the editor of all our videos on YouTube, is with us. He's present. Say hello, Andrew, to the legendary chat of Twitch and YouTube.
Hello, hello. I don't have a voice.
You don't?
Like that, but
We are doing something very cool today. We are recording a YouTube video, but then we were like, why not do it live? Why not chat with you guys and get your questions? Because the idea here is to get your questions. It's to solve your problems. So, I'm just updating my paints here. I'm getting the Radical SR10 into that new lovely golden paint, and we're gonna start explaining setup stuff. Again, this is gonna be an ultimate guide for beginners. If you know nothing about ARB, toll, camber, pressure, damper, compression, bump, rebound, rake, splitters, dive planes, you know, like fisheye mirrors. We're gonna talk about car setup today. I just wanna update this because in the video I want it to be with our lovely, I mean, not that this is not lovely, this is amazing. I love this livery from Texaco, but I'm really looking forward to see the lovely golden livery that we have made for the YouTube channel. And I'm just trying to update it here, but it's taking a while. So let me see if I can just do this and this. Oh my god, I can barely read the chat because it's too dark. I'm gonna move you guys somewhere else. I'm gonna put you here. What?
will this be for all categories, including high downforce and low downforce car?
It's for high downforce and low downforce. We're gonna talk about wings for sure. Guys, throw your questions, all questions, and Andrew, if you pick some question that you find interesting that you want answered as well, write them down so I don't lose them. Bus Races has just subscribes for 25 months in a row. Dude, that's like almost 3 babies. That's amazing. Actually, amazing. How are you, man?
25 months, longer than my
Could you go for damper? Could you go for damper tuning? I don't speak English anymore. Yes, we're going to cover damper tuning as well. But remember, this is going to be a basic explanation. So Recovered from Rona. Oh, I'm actually recovering from something. I don't know if it was COVID, but I had a bad fever recently. Okay, now that I added a little bit of background opacity on this chat, I'm gonna move you guys somewhere where I can read easily. I think this will work perfectly. This will work on anywhere. Gran Turismo, R Factor, Mario Kart, real life.
Yeah, I've been struggling in Mario Kart with downforce.
Yeah, man. I mean, those wings. If you get like in. Oh my god. I'm gonna save this. Let me try again. Oh my god, still not showing the paint. So I'm gonna do this and this and this. Oh, my trading paints is dead. Whoop! Something is happening. Whoa! Oh, there you go. Look at that beauty. Oh my god, I love this livery. Lovely, 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 lovely. Bowser got supreme downforce. Bowser reminds me of the Mercedes AMG GT4. It's like a rolling tub. SR10 is a hella aggressive car. That's why you're choosing for the video to display how the car will handle so dramatically different at the extremes? Yes, that's the goal. Okay, I guess we should start, right? There's gonna be no music during the recording, so it's gonna feel very empty and boring. But you feel free to watch the final product only in a week or two, I guess, when we have the final thing. So is the stream working all good? Is that all good? Beautiful. So let's start then. Should I record the intro right now, Andrew, or do you think I can record the intro after? What's the process?
You can do it now, and then we can do one after.
We can do it now, and then we can do it after. Let me. I want to literally. Okay, this is like the laziest. No, this is the best gift for the editor. I'm literally gonna drive a lap or two here to get the B-roll so I can record by watching the replay, and you don't have to do that much editing. Look at that. You're still gonna do a lot of editing anyways. Can you do it? Can you do a video about car setup, brake bias, and these things? This is exactly what I'm doing right now. Oh my god, it's been a while since I drove this thing. Intro? Intro very soon. Oh, you know what could be cool? Recording the intro while driving. What do you think? And I wish I could drive like, oh my god, these cool tires, that aggressive in real life. By the way, did you guys know that I'm driving in real life in literally a week? We're gonna have 7.5 hours of track time at Sebring in real life, and we're gonna record all of that, and you guys are gonna have a nice video. Okay, so it's good also to do a few laps in the setup. Is this the baseline setup though? I think that's the baseline. Let me just check it out. Yeah, that's the baseline. I got the baseline. Okay, so bumps are going to wreck your neck. Yes, I'm scared actually. I'm honestly like I'm seeing the onboards, and like I wonder how you don't break your teeth driving at Sebring with a Radical. It's insane. It feels like I'm. Okay, that's better. Felt like I was like trying to reach the microphone and having a bad posture. Okay, let's record. It's important to also record the video. Imagine if I did this without recording the video. Okay, start recording. 40 megabits, that's good. Is that good, Andrew? Andrew?
Yeah, shoot. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just
Can you hear
checking.
me?
So it looks like I have 2 audios here. I'm just thinking, what if I need to do something to? Oh, but the audio tracks are separated. But there's something weird. Is this? No, it's just this card that feels a little bit weird, actually. It looks a tiny bit weird in the... you're gonna do the editing, right? So I guess I'm overthinking too much. I'm overthinking. Let's start recording. We are recording right now. Sim Racers. Sim Racers. This is the ultimate car setup guide for beginners. You're gonna understand how to set up your car. But before that, we gotta put a few things out of the way. And this intro sucks. Oh my god, I'm so bad at recording stuff. You guys have to see how I record things here at home. Like I record 7 times and then I delete everything and do 7 more. Alright, Sim Racers. Today we're braking late and losing corners. Whenever we record here for the intro, we're probably not using it. I need a script. No, I got addicted to it. I got addicted to a script and a teleprompter. That's the problem. Been doing it for too long. There you go. The thing is that like for YouTube it's different. Like on Twitch I'm talking to you guys. I'm not thinking about retention. On YouTube every second counts. So that's why I recorded that bit on the last lap. It was fine for Twitch, but for YouTube, if I upload something like that, people click away. They don't watch it. You know, they just leave because it's boring. But if I go like Mr. Beast style, all in, you guys continue watching and it goes viral. Look at this thing, is pretty oversteery actually. Woo! I'm doing a few laps in the baseline just to kind of feel before we show you the differences. For the radicals, I fixed
Someone asked also, what wheel setup are you running?
I'm using the Logitech G Pro pedals, wheelbase, and steering wheel, and the Play Seat Sensation Pro, MSI triples, 4090, rapid fire, and the rest is Logitech. Actually, this I'm using a very old Sennheiser that I have that is pretty amazing. I have it for over 7 years. Imagine 7 years this thing, and it's still amazing. German robust stuff. Okay, anyways, Sim Racers. Today we're gonna learn everything that is really important about car setup. Today you're going to understand how every piece works when it comes to car setup. You're gonna know how it feels and what to change when you're trying to play with setups, because initially it's pretty daunting and scary to change the setup if you don't know what you're looking for. You're just like changing stuff randomly and not really sure what you really want to get out of it. So today we're gonna break it down into a few things. The first thing though, before we go on to the setups, I'm gonna open the trowel here. Oh, this is what I wanted really to record. I think this looks better, right? I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna do it again.
Looks clean.
This looks great. Sim Racers. Today you are going to learn how to set up your car in sim racing or racing in real life. We're gonna go through the most important thing. We're gonna go through the most important things for you to know what to look for when you're playing with the setups, because the most terrible thing initially is to not know exactly what you want to do, and you just get scared and you never learned, which is totally fine if you're a beginner. Like I would say, you can play for 6 months to a full year without ever thinking about setup, because there are fixed series, there are setups available. You don't have to learn how to do the setups yet. You have to learn car handling first. And this is actually one of the first things that I want to talk about with you guys. I'm gonna get a little note that I did here so that we can go through them, and I can have a proper structure so I can teach you guys what to do with each thing. So where is it? Okay. By the way, Andrew, do you want me to put the chat on the video, on the scene? I can put it like here, bottom right.
Yeah, for this, I guess this one is fine. I think when you do the actual graphs, probably leave it out.
Okay. So, by the way, guys, you can send any questions. I'm explaining stuff here. Whatever is not clear, write it down. Hey, like, I didn't understand this. What about this? What about that? Just write it down. Andrew is gonna... Andrew, by the way, for you as well, like, if you have any question, interrupt me. And tell you, like, before I move on to a different topic, like, let's make sure that that topic is clear. And at the very end, we can have a little bit of a chat as well. So, first of all,
sounds good.
Let's break the myth that you cannot be fast without a good setup. The myth is a fast driver with... Actually, this is not the myth. This is the truth. The truth here is a fast driver with any setup will be faster than a slow driver with a good setup. Because the driving technique will be worth like 20 seconds. If you don't know how to drive fast, you will be 20 seconds slower. You start learning, and then you gain those seconds until you reach a point, and that is essentially around 1 second slower. We're talking about the same fuel level. Of course, if you have a quality setup, it's going to be much quicker. But same fuel, a regular baseline setup will not be more than like 0.5 slower than a very good setup. Maximum a second. Let's put it to a second. But that's it. If you're like 2 seconds slower, you're not gonna find that time in setup only. And if you try to find that time through setup, it's not gonna be the most efficient way for you. So here's the thing: setup is one thing. Driving technique comes before that. That's my point, right? Have you explained dampers already? No, I haven't explained anything. We're just starting. This is the good stuff. So, setup is 10 times less important than driving technique. Let's invert that. Driving technique is 10 times more important than setup. I remember spending probably a full year without touching setup, and then I was like, okay, now it's time to really learn. So I went through all the articles on the internet, and I went through like all the websites and all the little YouTube. I remember Viper Concept, which is a very good YouTube channel that I don't know if they're posting anymore, but they had like lots of little explanation. It was amazing. And also I read books. One of the books that I really recommend is Tune to Win by Carol Smith. It's really good. And a lot of stuff that I'm going to explain to you here is probably going to be influenced by that book. Exactly. If you are not in top split, it's not really worth it to focus on setups. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you have that in your mind, it's like, oh my God, the setup is, I'm stressed because I don't have a setup. Just do fixed series. It's totally fine. Now, here's the thing. Student question. When learning a new combo, if the car is understeering or oversteering a lot, should I change the setup straight away or learn to deal with it before changing? If you're my student, you know my answer. I want you to know how to induce oversteer and induce understeer through driving only. This is very important. If you can't induce oversteer anywhere or induce oversteer anywhere, just by adjusting your driving inputs, changing setup is just, it's not going to help as much, because this setup can only be felt perfectly. You can change the setup and feel the difference if you know how to induce more rotation, how to induce less rotation, because then you can really like notice the subtle differences. Sometimes you see people talking about like changing a click or two. Like, you will never feel the difference of a click or two if you don't know how to induce understeer, induce oversteer. So you can really feel and know exactly how the car is responding on a subtle level to your inputs. And if you're a beginner, this might sound like black magic initially. It's gonna get better. It's just like you just need more track time, and you're gonna get like fluent in the technique, and you're gonna feel these differences. And then it's gonna make sense when you talk about a click or two. But it doesn't have to make sense yet. The idea for this video today is to show you extreme differences. So I'm going to show you when to change the setup, at what stage of the corner, at what types of corners, so that you feel the extremes. And then after you feel those extremes, with time, you're going to be able to feel more subtle differences. Okay, so let's see if I covered everything. Fast driver with any setup will be faster than a slower driver with good setup. Setup is 10 times less important than driving technique. Driving technique comes before setup. Okay, perfect. No need to learn setup on the first 6 months of driving. Perfect. And this guide is, oh, by the way, yeah, this is important here. I'm gonna duplicate this, Andrew, and then how can I duplicate this card? Copy. Okay, I'm gonna duplicate and start deleting it. So this guide is the foundation of car setup. It's an ultimate guide for beginners. I won't go into too much detail. If you want to get deeper into a specific topic, do your own research, but you're gonna come out of this video with a basic understanding of the functionality of it. It's not gonna be black magic anymore. Now, I'm reading some questions from students here. What is the goal of this setup? How should I feel it? How do I know that the changes are better? And how do I know that the changes will be fast or slow besides trial and error? You won't. You have to try it. So here's the thing about setup is you have an idea. You have a suspicion. Oh, I'm slower at high speed. I'm going to change a little bit the wing. Oh, sorry. I'm oversteering on high speed. I'm going to change a little bit the wing. You still have to go there and try it. Like, if you're very experienced, then you can quickly like get the right change. But you will never know if you don't do trial and error. So trial and error is the way to go. In the sim, you can do that infinite amount of time. In real life, it's more tricky. You have to be very informed of the changes that you're doing, because if it's a really bad change, you can crash. So not ideal. But trial and error is the way to go. The best guide for your setup changes are consistency and delta. If your setup makes you a lot more consistent, that might be a good thing. If your setup makes your delta go green, that might be a good thing. You, of course, want both at the same time. That's the trickiest thing to do. Sometimes if you're not used to an oversteer setup, oversteer setups will be faster, but then you won't be as consistent, because you're not, you can't still dance with the car as much, and you end up doing a very fast lap and then spinning and so on. But a good setup is fast and consistent. This is what you're gonna do. Can a setup improve your lap time and consistency at the same time?
And how does it help you?
Is there a delay? Like sometimes
how does it help with the consistency aspect?
Because you expect, you can predict more what happens with the car. So if the car is too, for example, let's talk about an oversteer setup. Like it's too oversteering. You can't. Like you get back on power, spin right away. So you try to do a correction or change in the setup to make the car a little bit more planted. It might be a little bit slower, but for you, over the course of a lap, because you're going to be more consistent, it might pay off, and you might, over the course of a whole race, be faster because you're making less mistakes. So in your case as a beginner, you might add a little bit of rear wing. For example, my real life team, Spec, they added a little bit of wing for me when I was testing the radical because I'm a new driver. And they're like, okay, we don't want to get like a new driver who never drove a radical before in an oversteer radical doing 200 kph. So, but again, like it's difficult to get a setup that's consistent and fast at the same time. And the only way you're going to get a fast setup and be consistent with it is through understanding your driving technique, is through understanding why you're losing the rear in some places and how you can correct it. And that's all driving technique. That's why I'm saying like driving technique is more important. Okay, that's out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm. And I guess one last question. So when it comes to the setup for the car, would you say throughout a race, would you have to more or less change that setup, like due to tire temperature or due to tire wear, et cetera?
Not that much.
Or is it
like
a one-time thing that you do during?
Essentially, what you're gonna have in the end is two setups: a race setup and a quali setup. What I see the high level drivers doing is still having a race setup that is pretty sketchy, but not as much as the quali setup. Quali setup, they even push a little bit further. And then on the beginner level, you can be a little bit more aggressive in quali and then a lot safer in the race. I don't recommend making big changes between quali and race because you want to have a very consistent behavior, predictable behavior. You don't want to like jump from quali to race and then the car just doesn't turn and you go straight out of the corner. So a car that's very understeer is also not good because understeer is bad. So I'm just talking about like too much oversteer. If you can't handle it, then maybe in the race you got a click of wing and you're gonna be a little bit more planted. Did that answer your question? Why is that such a delay with you? Like you're in a call on Discord with me.
Maybe because you're streaming and you're hearing me later.
No, I'm hearing you straight on Discord. I'm in a call with you.
I can restart Discord quickly.
Yeah, let's try that. Hello. Okay. Would you rather change the setup to make it optimal faster and try to adapt to it, or make it more comfortable to you? That's the thing. I, as a coach, want you to be out of your comfort zone. If you're in practice, if you have the time, get an oversteer setup and try to deal with it. Like, worst thing that can happen is you're going to crash in the wall and reset. That's fine. So that's why, like in iRacing, you can drive the Skip Barber, the Ray FF1600, and these cars are super oversteering. Is that correct? That's grammatically correct. And you have to deal with it right away on the beginner cars. So when you move to a different class, you're already going to be more used to it. You have to be consistent with... Oh, let me share my screen here real quick. Yeah, you have to be consistent with oversteer cars. This is a prerequisite. And generally that happens when you turn the steering less. That's a very important thing to know. If you turn the steering less, if you don't like abuse the steering, an oversteer car is going to make a lot more sense to you because you're going to turn less. Oh, it's already oversteering. Of course, it still takes time for you to get to that moment where you can deal with the oversteer. Can you see this right now? Is it working?
Yeah.
Oh, it's good. Finally, I can talk to you in real time. It's not a letter anymore.
No.
Okay. How to test the setup changes? Do at least 3 laps to test something that you're doing. Like you're changing wings, you're changing this or that. Don't judge the setup change in the out lap because you're still on cold tires, because you're still adapting to it, because you need to adjust your driving to the new setup sometimes. Sometimes when you change a setup, it's a concept that you change and then you have to change a lot of other things around it to make that concept work and be faster. So I already found myself doing a change, and then it was slower, but I was like, but this makes sense. I'm going to change something else. And then like you're doing combinations of changes to make that first change work, and then you measure it. So setup can be very tricky because you can get into a rabbit hole of changing too many things and then you get lost. So you have to be careful with that. You change the concept, then second, third change, then you go back to the original one, and then you see how it goes. You have to always go back to your best lap setup, and sometimes just go back to some previous setup that you didn't test. Like that's why it requires so much time. You have to be testing a lot of stuff. You have to name all your setups. You make a change, you save it as a different, like V1.0, V1.1, V1.2, and so on. So you have to make these changes and remember what you're doing so that you don't get lost.
I've never done a setup change in iRacing, but I think what you're saying is you can save those so you don't have to remember what change you made, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you can save the setup, name it whatever you want, the version, the date, the lap time. So something that I did a lot when I was driving, when I was crazy about setup, is to put the lap time, because I was always testing in a fixed condition. So whenever I did a best lap time, I would save the setup with the time. But I mean, that's just me. People save like with, of course, if you're driving in different conditions, then you're gonna have to use different ones, different naming. Anyways, so yeah, how to test the setup changes? Do at least 3 laps. Make sure you're testing it. Don't just judge the setup in the first 2-3 laps, because you're gonna have to make some adjustments in your driving to make that work if that is the right change. Now, where to start with the car setup? What is the most important thing to do with car setup? And this is where we actually start, because we're going to talk about mechanical grip stuff. We're going to talk about downforce stuff, and we're going to talk about mixed stuff. So mixed means it affects both the mechanical grip, but also the aerodynamic grip. So let's start with the most important thing that really changes a lot the behavior of the car, which is the rake. So what is the rake? I'm gonna switch here to paint. I guess that's working. So let's place just a straight line here. And honestly, I think I'm gonna do this with my hands. So the rake, no, I'm going to do this. This is good. So rake is the difference between the ride height on the rear tires and the ride height on the front tires. So let's say we have a little car here. There you go. Nice car. The ride height is how tall the car is, literally, like in the rear. If this is very high, let's call it, I don't know, 80 millimeters. And this is 40 millimeters. Then we have 40 millimeters of rake, essentially. So positive rake is when the car is literally like this. The car is pointing down. This is positive rake. Now, when we make the car like perfectly flat like that, so let's say 50-50, that's 0 rake. The car has absolutely 0 rake. Now, this is negative rake, and it's very rare. You will rarely find cars with negative rake because it's aerodynamically inefficient. So what you want really is to have a car that cuts through the wind, and the body itself acts like a wing where the wind is pushing and sucking the car down against the track. So more rake, no rake, less rake. Now what happens with the rake in terms of car handling? Like what happens with the car when you change the rake? So in iRacing, we are going to change the spring perch offset here to change the ride height of the car. So as you can see here, we have 61.9 on the front, left front, right front, and we have 77 in the rear. So if I want the car to be safer, let's say, and rotate more understeery, I'm going to decrease the rake. So I'm doing this essentially. I'm gonna bring the car down. So this has an incredible effect. Not incredible. This has a very important effect of the weight of the car is being distributed slightly more towards the rear. So there's more weight, more grip on the rear tires, and the wind cutting down through the corner to the corner. The wind cutting down on the car is a little bit more slim, so there's less drag. So a car with less rake, like this, let's make a very aggressive one. Pretty crazy rake here. So very low rake. The car is supposed to be very understeery because there's a lot more weight now on the rear tires, and there are more technical explanations. I don't want to go through that because, again, this is a guide for beginners. But the car is now supposed to be pretty understeering. So I'm going to try to rotate the car. Of course, I can still spin if I want, because I still, with driving technique, I can still induce oversteer or induce understeer. But what I can see from driving this is that, you see, it starts pushing mid-corner. It doesn't want to continue rotating. And this is one thing that I see a lot with rake. Rake helps the car maintain or increase the rotation. You see, like with less rake, the car does not want to get any more rotation. It wants to go straight, essentially. So I can try as much as I want. Let me try to spin here. Yeah, you can still spin with the car, especially on cold tires, if you really force it. But mid-corner, I start turning in, and then I want the car to rotate a lot. Well, I still got a little bit because I overheated the tires there.
And
Now the tires are really... Oh, wait, what? Sorry?
This is negative rake?
This is low rake. So the rear tires are lower.
Yeah.
And then the car is going to be a lot less rotatey. It's going to be less oversteery. And it's going to be slightly faster on the straights. So this is important. The car is going to be faster on the straights. Like, you have to remember that rake also affects the downforce and the drag. Again, I keep braking super late here.
And how much time are you talking, like, on a straight compared to someone who doesn't
Not
have
too
that?
much. Not too much. Like, depending on the rake changes, it can be... Depending on the length of the straight as well. If it's like a super long straight, we're talking 2-3 tenths. Maybe that's like, if you do an aggressive change, that's 2-3 tenths per lap. Okay, so that was low rake. You can see the car still able to oversteer because I did on cold tires, and because I know how to really force with trail braking, how to make the car rotate. But most people will drive this and it would say, oh my god, this car does not want to turn. Now we're gonna do the opposite. We're gonna get a lot of rake. See, what I'm looking here, guys, is the ride height. It's not the spring perch offset. So I'm decreasing the value of the offset to increase the ride height. This is very important. It's the actual height that I'm changing. This is the number that I'm looking at. So now I'm gonna go for maximum rake here. So,
and you do have one question here as well. So one person said, so what would it mean for steering? Also, does it depend on the car?
What would it mean for steering?
And also, does it depend on the car?
I mean, the steering is a dynamic thing. You will have to adjust it depending on the rotation of the car and how much more you want and so on. So I would say the steering is unaffected. Your driving is affected, and that includes the steering, but the steering itself is not a factor.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends a lot on the car. Some cars, I would say 99% of the cars will behave similarly when it comes to rake. 99%. Like, you want cars just because of the physics involved. Some cars, like the LMP2, I think, or like the hyper cars, they have a slightly different rake and so on. But that's exception, and you have to study specifically that car, how it behaves. And remember, you have to do always trial and error. So whatever I say here, my goal is, my mission here is going to be accomplished if you feel the difference and if you have a better understanding of car setup. But you still have to go there and try it for yourself. Don't just trust everything that I'm going to say here. Now we're going to test a big rake. So we're going to decrease the fronts and increase the rears. So it's going to be a crazy change here. See, 58 in the front right height and 79 in the rear right height. Let's see how this will look like. I'm going to try to drive similarly, but you will pretty much quickly see that the car will oversteer a lot more, and then I'm going to have to correct it a lot more. It's already a little bit more nervous. Yeah, Daniele, we're gonna have to talk about that as well.
Which setup is this again?
This is the high rake setup.
Yeah.
Especially on lower speeds, I can see that the car really wants to go. It's really more oversteering because of the rake. Big time. You can see me doing a lot more corrections because the car just wants to go. Like, you ask for a tiny bit and it really goes for it. Now it actually understeered a little bit in the higher speeds. I'm forgetting to downshift as well. Let me try a few more corners. But we already saw that it's essentially oversteering a lot more. Almost lost it a few times. What happens if there's too much rake? Interesting. I'm gonna answer that. So if there's too much rake, the car is going to be too oversteery and it's going to be slow on the straights. But it might be the fastest setup. Maybe the fastest setup is the highest rake possible. Sometimes it happens. On high speeds, I can see that the rake is not affecting this car so much. And this is going to be important because we're going to actually talk about that. Okay, so rake is out of the way. But here's the thing with the rake, though. Here's the thing with the rake. And this is going to take some time to explain. And we're going to talk about springs to make that explanation work. So someone already talked about it in the chat. The rake changes. So if you're stopped, the car's like that. But on higher speeds, you have a lot of wind, a lot of air pushing the car down in different ways. And it's not gonna just push the car like that. It depends a lot on how much downforce you have on each end. So let's say we have a rake right now here. Change this like that. Let's say we have a rake that is how am I gonna do this the most simple way? The car stopped and the rake is 80 and 60. Now when the car starts getting air on top of it, it will start pushing the car down, right? But it pushes the entire body in different ways. So if you have a big wing here, let's say like you have absolutely no downforce on the front, and you have a huge wing in the rear, what happens? The force pushing, the air is pushing the car down, right? And the force pushing the spring here will make the spring here compress. So this end of the car because there's so much weight on the front. Sorry, because there's so much wind on the rear tires. It's gonna make the car do this on higher speeds. So the car can be like that and it's like literally like stopped. The car starts gaining speed and the air is like really pushing it, and then the rake is totally different at high speeds. So a car with a huge downforce level on the rear could bring this number down to 60. And now you have a car that is, of course, this is still going down a little bit, so let's call it like 55. It's gonna go 55 here and 60 here. So this car has a lot of rake when it's stopped, but it has a lot less rake when it's at high speeds. This is what we're gonna call dynamic rake. Dynamic rake is the rake values at each speed. Stopped car has a specific value, medium speed has a specific value, and high speed has a specific value. So the more speed, the more the car will compress. Now, what is going to dictate the dynamic rake the most? I told you here, I gave you the example of a big wing, but be careful. It's not the downforce level that is going to be the biggest driver of dynamic rake. It's actually the spring rate. So the spring rate, the spring is literally this, right? So it compresses. If you add a soft spring, let's make a big spring here, a soft spring on the rear tires and a very stiff spring on the fronts, then the wind at higher speeds will be able to push the rear end a lot more, and the dynamic rake will be a lot more present. So the spring rate, we still didn't talk about spring rates. The spring rates will affect the dynamic rake of the car big time. Is there a way to measure the dynamic rake? Yes. Telemetry software, you can measure the right height of each of the ends at different speeds. So you can definitely find that. It's a little bit like, if you want to get there, it's a little bit more geek, like for telemetry. You can also just feel it. Like, for example, let's say the car is understeering at high speeds. What you can do is you soften the spring rate of the front so that this spring can be more compressed at higher speeds, and the car has more rake at higher speeds, and the car is going to be more oversteery at high speeds. It's going to rotate more at higher speeds. Is that clear so far? I just realized how crazy complicated this is to explain. I thought I was going to make like a 40-minute video explaining this, and I'm literally in the second topic. And it's like they all like interconnect and interact. It's insane. But then that creates a higher weight transfer during braking. The weight transfer is always the same. Weight transfer is not a movable thing. Niels Huizinkveld has a nice video about that on YouTube channel, so check it out. He actually explains it in a very, very cool way. Okay. So, Angel, are you following me?
Yes, I am.
We got rake out of the way. I didn't put rake in the script, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm gonna start talking about ARBs. Let's talk about ARBs. Clear your mind about rake. We're gonna go back to that after. What is an ARB? So let's go to my lovely paint skills here. Say we have a car. We're going that way. Now, the springs are here. And they act independently. So the car can do whatever you want, because this spring compresses and this spring extends, so we have the car rolling to one side, or the opposite, or these two springs compress and these two springs go up, so we have the car pitching, so it's moving that way. This is with springs. Now, an anti-roll bar is anti-roll. So it does not, it prevents the car from tilting and rolling too much like that. So what is the idea behind them? They will not affect dynamic rake. You see? Because the car is still free to move naturally like that. If you change the ARB, it's going to be a mechanical only change. So if you want to change something and you don't want to affect different corners at low speed, high speed, medium speed, ARB is going to be your safest approach. Now, what adjustments do we want? So here, I'm going to keep the arrow here so we know this is the front and this is the rear. So if we get this stiff, it's going to prevent rolling. And there's going to be a lot less weight transfer to the side. I mean, I just told you that there is no weight transfer, but it's just a way to explain. And the car will have a little bit less front end grip. It's going to be a more consistent but lower level of grip. And then the car will understeer. So if you stiffen the ARB, you will get less rotation on the front tires. If you get this soft ARB, you will get more oversteer, more rotation. Now, there's some cool tricks that I'm going to show you guys that you have to stick. No one talks about it. Rear tires. If we get the rear ARB and if it is stiff, the car will oversteer more because there's going to be a little bit less overall grip on the rear tires, although it's more consistent. So you get the car a little bit more rotatey, but at the same time more predictable. And no one talks about this. If you get it soft, you'll get overall more grip. But when you lose it, you lose it. So, cool tricks about that. I'm always deleting this and having to do it again. Andrew is gonna make, guys, look at this. Andrew is gonna make a lovely video because he's a crazy mage with video editing, so don't worry. Now, a cool thing that you can do with ARBs, I noticed that ARBs are very important under braking on the front ARB. So if you want to affect the balance of the car under braking on the entry of the corner, then change this ARB. It's going to be more important than changing this one. If you want to affect the balance of the car more on the exit, when you're getting the power down, you're accelerating, then you want to change the rear ARB a little bit more. The effects of changing ARB front and rear will be felt everywhere, but it's going to be more pronounced at the end that is being used the most. So if you're accelerating, then you're getting this ARB to act a little bit more because there's literally more force against these two tires on power. So if you want the car to oversteer a little bit more, it's too understeer, I want the car to really let go a little bit more to be a little bit faster, then you stiffen the rear tires on exit, right? But if you want the car, if the car, say you're turning into that corner, right-hander, and you're always locking up these tires, locking up the inside front, it's a great change to soften the ARB. Why is that? Because the ARB prevents roll, right? Remember? But what you're going to do with that is you're going to have a little bit more grip on the front tires. The car is going to rotate a little bit more, and there's gonna be more responsiveness without you having to force the tires, and you end up not locking the tires because of that. So make sure that if you're adjusting the ARB on entry, adjust the front one first. If you're adjusting the ARB because you're struggling with something on the exit, then adjust the rear ones first. Is that clear so far for ARBs?
Yeah, and I guess quick question: how many cars like have ARBs, or do all cars have ARBs?
Lots of cars have ARBs. It really depends. I would say 80% of race cars have ARBs. 85 if it's higher rank. Many cars, like 95%. Like, did you know some cars, IndyCar, prototype, hypercars, you have buttons to change the ARB in the car while driving. So, for example, the prototype has like a number that goes 1 to 5 here and 1 to 5 on the rear. And then you can, for that corner, I'm going to do 1.5 because I really want the car to rotate. Or no, for that corner, I'm going to do like 5.1 because I just lost the rear and I don't know, something like that car is oversteering too much. I'm going to do a 5.1. So more means stiff. So higher number means stiffer. And if I want to do like 5.1, then I'm definitely getting a lot less rotation. Now, let's any more question, or can we try it out on the car? I needed this breakdown before the IR01 series last season. You would stiffen rear ARB if you worn the rears because of a spin. Stiffen? No.
Is for the ARB, do you change it during the race, or do you change it when you're pitted?
Almost all cars, you will not be able to change it in the race. Like this is a rare thing. Like mostly, it's a car setup that you can only change in the garage.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
Because I know with like brake biases, you can change it during the race, right?
Yeah. We're gonna talk about brake bias as well. This is gonna be a long video, and we're gonna have chapters. We're going to try to cut down, like each explanation is taking like, 20, 25 minutes. We're going to try to bring them down to like max 10 minutes. And then we have like everything. So the video might be like an hour. To recap, the front ARB will make the car more responsive, and making it stiff will make more understeer. Exactly. So let's test the extremes. We're going to go here, ARB. You see, we can have it disconnected or soft, medium, hard, extra hard. And I forgot to change the scene. Let me change the scene. So here, let's change the ARB. In the front, you can see ARB size. And you can even see like here, down here, there is a little description. Changing the anti-roll bar size equates to a change of the ARB diameter. More rate, more understeer. So we can go from disconnected, which is absolutely no ARB and the tires are completely free. There's a lot of roll, or extra hard where the car really does not roll that much and the tires kind of want to go with the roll and they prevent it from happening. So the car it bounces a lot more and so on. So we're going to try first disconnected and XX hard. So disconnected on the front, that means super soft, and hardest possible on the rear tires, so we can see how the car behaves. I have to drive more than one lap because on cold tires is so tricky. Like whatever you do on the previous corner will affect the temperature anyways. Oh, the car really wants to go already. I was talking about that, but it really works. Okay, let's see here how it behaves. See, the front just goes. If I want the car to rotate with this configuration, it's gonna be incredibly responsive. Of course, maybe too much. It's way too much front. It just goes wherever I go. Like there's no understeer. Of course, I can still induce understeer. Let me tell you something. You can get a very oversteery setup and still understeer if you know how to adjust your driving. I'll have to always remember that. But trying to go as fast as possible, this car will get a lot of rotation and spin. So this is soft ARB and hard. Soft ARB on the front and hard ARB on the rear tires. Now we're going to try the opposite. We're going to do extra hard on the front ARB and disconnect the rear ARB. Oh, that's a very good point out. When you have a very stiff ARB on the front and a very soft ARB on the rear, you can lift the front tire because the ARB is trying to prevent the roll, but if the car is light enough, it actually lifts the tire. I think there's a cool picture that we can show some pictures in the video, Andrew, of like a car with like a stiff ARB and a soft rear will lift the front tires while turning, while trail braking, because it's just like there's just so much. It's so stiff in the front and so soft in the rear that it allows the roll to happen in the rear. But because the car is preventing the roll from happening on the front, the front is lifted. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah.
It's funny that like this car on cold tires is still oversteering, even with like incredibly stiff. Oh, but I'm locking the... Oh, okay, now I'm understeering. You can see that. And if you hear it, I'm actually locking the front tires under braking. Remember I told you? It's very easy to lock the front tires if you have a stiff ARB. Look at that, I'm barely braking. And I'm locking the front left because the ARB is way too stiff. Because at an extreme level, it would even lift the tires. So remember that. ARB stiff on the front helps you lock up too much. So be careful with stiffening the front ARB too much. I guess we got it. That is out of the way. Now, anything else about ARB? ARB is anti-roll bar. Yes, that's correct. When I'm driving on the limit, there's less of an indication of when the car is about to go with softer ARB. That is correct. Yes. Yes, that's true. Like with a stiffer ARB, the car starts skidding and slipping before it slides. And cars with soft ARB, they go more quickly to the slide phase. So when you lose the rear, you lose it more aggressively. It's more snappy. And with a stiffer car, you can start losing it and you notice it and you dance with it and you're not getting too much in that dangerous zone of the point of no return. There's more power in the car, I mean a bit stiffer ARB in the front. Not necessarily, because if you get wheel spin, you get wheel spin, my brother. You spin. Wheel spin, you have to control it with your foot. So try to not fix too much. I mean, you can do it at some point, but not an extreme level. That's not the right way to correct the car having a lot of power. Pictures for the tire lift. Do you think we can see the tire lifting in this? This is a compression. We can see it here. I don't think we can see it in this car. Yeah, we can see it. Only if it's like actually jumping. So right now we can see that this tire is off the ground. Tiny bit. That's a very, very extremely subtle example of why probably without the ARB, it would not lift that much. It would still like stay in contact with the ground. So yeah, if this is happening, it's probably because of the ARB being extra stiff on the front tires. Andrew?
Yeah.
Any more question about ARB?
Not specifically the A or B. It makes sense to like when you show the examples when you drove.
Okay.
Because I can see the understeer and oversteer.
I want you to after this to try these things while driving and feel the difference and let me know.
I will.
Perfect. Now we're gonna talk about the missing piece because we have not talked about spring rates, and I mentioned spring rates in the rake bit because it affects it big time, but now we're gonna talk about it only. So next up we have spring rates. Let me change this. Now, what is a spring rate? It's how soft or stiff the springs of the car are. So we have a spring here. Wow. We have a spring here. I'm going to try again. I'm going to keep trying. Spring. 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 Now, you can adjust the rate of the springs independently, but we don't do that much. We generally change both fronts and both rears and keep them symmetrical. Some setups don't even allow you to independently change them. Some setups allow you to independently change them. Now, the spring will act exactly like the ARB when it comes to lateral roll. So stiffer spring, less roll, more spring, softer spring, more roll. It does act to prevent roll like this, but because it allows the entire body to go down or up, it affects that. It will also control pitch, whether the car is doing this or that, which is affecting the rake, remember? So the dynamic rake is heavily affected by how soft or stiff the springs are. Now, we are going to change the springs in a similar manner to ARBs. If you soften the front springs, the car will get more rotation. So it's going to get more oversteer. This means the car points more with less steering. The car is really responsive. You turn a little bit and whoop, you already get this. So softer spring, you get more rotation. And softer spring in the rear tires, you get less rotation. So you mean softness. A good way to remember this is softness. Oh my God, softness equals grip. This is a way to remember. Don't take this religiously. It's just a memorization technique. Softness means grip. So if you want more grip on the front tires, then you want to put this soft. If you want more grip on the rear tires, then of course the car is going that way. Then you want to make this soft to make the car safer. Safer and more understeer. Or less oversteer. So basically less rotation. Now, the thing though is that the springs, they control the ride height of the car depending on the speed. Remember? That means when you start getting at higher speeds, 100, that was 160, 200, 300, then the stiffness will control the rake of the car. So that's the dynamic rake. So sometimes you change the spring expecting a mechanical change, but you also affect the aerodynamic change on higher speeds a little bit too much. This is the cool thing about the spring and the dynamic rake and the dynamic rake is that when you change the spring for more grip, so let's say you add more grip on the front, so soft front. At high speeds, the dynamic rake is also gonna add more grip to the front tires. So in a way, you get really the effects that you want. So it's very easy to feel that you're getting more grip on higher speeds with a softer spring because those two things add up. So any question about spring rate so far? Because after that, we're going to go to dampers and it's going to be even more complicated. What about progressive springs? That's a beginner setup, man. I don't even know what progressive springs is. Nem! What's up? In high speeds, soft fronts will also be better. What is better than what? You need a comparison. So here's the thing, like better, it depends so much on the window of operation that you have in each car, the regulation that you have for that series. So if you have, for example, a series that regulates stiffness, I don't know, I don't even think about the numbers, but like, let's say like this car can go from 1 to 10, right? Stiffness. And then that series runs between 7, 8, and 9. It's literally illegal to use 6. You cannot use less than 6. So this will be considered a soft spring, and this will be considered a hard spring because that's within the window of the agreed operation window that you can use. Please leave this video public so we can review. T-Bolt, this is going to be an actual video. This is a recording session. You guys are actors, paid actors right now. Patiently waiting for damper explanation. Yeah. Yo. If we lower spring rate, do we have to increase the ride height? If you want to maintain... That's a good question. That's a very good question. Whenever you soften the spring rate, because there's already weight, static weight on the car, it's gonna compress the car down more. So the car literally goes down a little bit. Let me see if I can show this in the game. So we're sitting down here. And this is how the car is looking. Okay, keeping this. Now, we're going to change the spring rate a lot. Oh, it won't allow me though. Oh, it's paused. Yeah, it won't allow me. I need to... I'm gonna read you this. So I'm gonna start with the lowest. Minimum. Okay, so let's try that again. I'm gonna get in the car. This is the softest spring possible. And this is how it looks. Now, I'm gonna get and stiffen the spring rate on the front tires. All the way. Stay in the car. I'm gonna go back. And I'm gonna try to see if there's a difference. Right now here, we can see that... let me see if I can show you guys something. Oh my god, it's such a tiny difference. Okay, guys. Look at the foot of the pit guy. Now look at the splitter. The splitter is a little bit under the foot. You see? This is with the softest spring rate. Now, look at that. You see? Now this is with the stiff spring rate on the front tires. I didn't change the rake, but because I changed the spring rate, the ride height naturally changed. And now you can see that the splitter is a little bit more aligned with the foot of the pit guy. That's how tiny the difference is. If it's visual, it's big. Because generally these changes are in millimeters, and they have a crazy impact in the car balance. So if you can see visually a change in rake, that means there's going to be a huge difference in car behavior as well. I'm talking about springs in a way that relates the front to rear and the balance. But you can also ask yourself, wait, what about all four stiff or all four soft? So let's talk about that. So what is faster? All soft or all stiff? Well, that really depends a lot on the track. If it's a flat track with not a lot of bumps, not a lot of curbs, you can go a little bit more towards the softer, but not too much. It really depends. You have to test it out. Remember, test it out. And if it's a little bit, if the track has a lot of bumps, you have to test it out because essentially it depends a lot on the track. No track is going to be flat. Some tracks are going to have lots of bumps. I think someone mentioned here. Let me check it out. Yeah, Sebring. Okay, Sebring. So I don't want to lose the chat. So if you have like a lot of bouncing because the track is full of bumps, then you want to stiffen the springs so the car doesn't bottom out when you land. So you jump, as soon as you land, you don't want to do that. So you want to prevent the car from bottoming out by stiffening the springs. Or if the track is incredibly smooth, flat, then you really don't need to stiffen the springs that much. But remember that there are many factors. Remember that we can also stiffen the springs to have a car that's a little bit more predictable, that starts sliding a little bit without suddenly losing it. So there are so many factors weighing in, and you have to do the trial and error and see what's more comfortable and faster. Remember, consistency and speed. Essentially, that's what you want with the setup anyways. This video is in order of priority. So I talked about rake first because you want to change rake first. And then I talked about, what was it? Was it ARBs? Rake, ARBs, and then springs. So rake first, always. It's like the simplest way to see the difference in balance. Then ARB is the simplest way without affecting too many things. And then spring rates, that's what we're talking about right now. I think that is it for spring rates. How much time was that for spring rates? I guess it was 20 minutes again.
All I see is the recording says 1 hour and 8 minutes.
Yeah, man. I don't know if we're going to be able to edit this before we travel. Maybe, because it's essentially the cuts. The cuts are going to be the most difficult.
Yeah.
And I do the cuts. So. Okay. I think now we can talk about. So we're done with spring rates. We're done with rake overall. Now we're gonna talk about dampers. Dampers. What are dampers? I'm gonna explain with my hands. It's gonna be easier. If you have a car that only has springs, you jump. The spring is extended. After the, like, as soon as you're in the air, the spring is extended. As soon as you land, you're gonna compress the spring. But what happens when you're bottoming out? The spring is compressed at the peak. It's gonna wanna push back. So it pushes back, but by the time you go past the point of resting, the resting point, it still has energy and it still goes up. So it's going past the resting point. Now it's extending. And then, because it's extending, it's pulling back now. It's going to pull back. The car is going down. Resting point still has energy. It's going to continue going. So you go into this motion of a car with no dampers. Continues going. What is the function of the damper? It slows down the movement. Think of honey, a very viscous liquid, and put a spring inside the honey. The honey is gonna like prevent it from moving up and down past the stress point because it's gonna slow down its thing until it reaches the spot where it's resting. Now there's no force acting on it, and then it stops. So a spring in air is like consistently. It's terrible. You would be bouncing forever. It would be terrible to drive. A spring with honey in it, a spring inside a honey bottle is like stops. Why? Because there's a viscous liquid preventing the oscillation from the spring. That is a damper. Now, the dampers can... I don't recommend too much playing with dampers like before playing with ARB, springs, rakes, and wings. I'm going to talk about wings after. Essentially, the function of the dampers is to maintain the car consistent and to help absorb a lot of energy. So you have... Oh my god, I'm already thinking too complicated for the video. Andrew, did you understand the basic function of the damper right now so far?
A bit, yeah.
A bit? Why not? Why not fully?
Well, for me, I haven't touched a lot of the setup stuff, but I think it's just...
I mean, just the function. Imagine you're sitting in a car and it's like bouncing, and the damper stops it bouncing. Did that make sense?
Yeah, like the soft. Yeah, that part did. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That part. That's all I explained so far.
Yeah.
I won't talk about slow and fast yet. I will maybe talk about on the end. The dampers also act as, we can call it rate for stiffness. So you can make the damper soft or hard. So generally a higher value is harder, or it slows down the speed of the suspension. So if you have a hard damper on the front tires, you create oversteer. So sorry, understeer. I'm gonna say that again. If you have a hard dampening, lots of dampening on the front tires, you have understeer. Just like ARB, just like springs. You see? Soft, more grip, hard, less grip. The thing though is that when is this damper acting? Because right now, if we're adding weight to the front tires and compressing the spring, then there's going to be a damper inside here that is going to control how much it compresses. And that's what we're going to call a compression damper. So compressor or let's call it compression damper. Will control how quickly or slowly the springs will compress. Now, the cool thing about dampers is that they can have a different speed control for when the springs are extending. And that's what we're gonna call, rebound. Rebound damper. So you can have compression or extension or rebound. So we generally see the naming here. We're gonna see comp or bump for compression, bump or compression or comp, and for extension we're gonna see generally rebound or RBD if you're driving like a course. Let me finish this word here. So far, so good. You can have the bump that controls the speed of compression, and you can have the rebound that controls the speed of extension. Andrew, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what you can do with it is, if you want the car to be a little bit more understeery, under braking on turn N with the weight on the fronts. Remember, if you're turning in, you're braking, and then you're starting to turn, you're releasing your brakes, but there's still a little bit of weight on the front tires. This is all controlled by the bump. So bump or compression damper, this is controlled on front tires on entry. This is where you get the biggest effects. So stiffer, more understeer. Soft, grip. Stiff, no grip. And then for the rear tires, you see the bump or compression acts exactly like the ARB and exactly like the springs. So same thing in the rear. If the bump on the rear is stiff, you get less grip on the rear tires. Or if it's soft, you get more compliance. The suspension compresses more quickly because it's softer and there's more grip. So the cool thing, remember that when you're braking and you're going that way and you're turning and you're trail braking to the corner, there's still some weight on the front tires. The compression on the front tires, comp or bump, is at the same time the extension of the rear tires. So rebound. So you have bump on the front acting because it's controlling how the suspension is going down. But at the same time, the rebound or the extension of the rears is being controlled by the rebound damper. So you see, when you start braking, you activate the bump on the fronts and the rebound on the rears at the same time. When you start accelerating, it's the opposite. When you start accelerating, the weight goes this way, right? So you get compression here and rebound here, and you can control that as well. So the same effects on the front out of corner or what? So the same effects on the compression here will also be on the rebound here. So you can just always invert them. But yeah, for the compression, stiffer on the front will mean understeer, softer on the front will mean oversteer. And then compression here, stiffer will mean oversteer, more rotation, and softer will mean less rotation. There is there are two types of dampers. You can have the slow damper, slow bump, or you can have the fast ones. So the slow ones are for braking, and by the way, we're gonna edit this out. Okay, Andrew.
Yes.
Like the writing. The slow dampers are for braking, accelerating, turning, and all the weight transfer that is going around the car. This is all controlled and affected in terms of car balance by the slow dampers. The fast dampers are gonna affect when you hit a curb, or when you're jumping a little bit, or a bump, or like whenever it's something like anything that's super fast. It's gonna be acted. It's gonna be not acted. It's gonna be affected by the fast bump. So as you can see, the effects on the fast bump are gonna be a little bit more subtle, because the big effects are on the slow bump, because you're consistently transferring the weight around. And fast is important when there's vibrations, when you're landing, when you're hitting curbs consistently, and those things are gonna be affected by the fast bumps. And it's the same thing. Soften the compression to get more grip on that end, and at the same time stiffen the rebound to get more grip on that end, on the other end that is lifting. I told you dampers is complicated, man.
Yeah, I'm just trying to take it all in.
Yeah, so what did you understand so far of dampers?
The first section, when like the first general part that you kind of made about dampers, I'm still processing it all in my head.
So you're saying that you didn't understand it?
I didn't. I'm taking time. Look at the rebound. Like I understand the rebound part goes up, and then the I'm just taking time to process.
Okay, so what you might have not understood is that hard or stiff is how viscous the liquid is inside. So how fast the spring can travel, can extend or compress. So a hard damper means this is going to compress very slowly. It's not going to allow it to go down so quickly. And if you had like a soft damper, that means the spring can move more quickly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense then.
That makes sense? Yeah. Anything else that still not sure, still not clear?
No, I think if I don't know if you can visually see it in iRacing too.
No, it's impossible.
No. Yeah, so
it's impossible. You have to feel it. Even driving here, like we can change the dampers, but the differences are going to be so subtle that you have to drive and change absurdly the values to see it. Yeah, exactly.
So would you say like in a race this would be like shaving a tenth off, or like with everything kind of going aligned together, or? Yeah,
exactly. So some things will have bigger effects. So you have like spring rate, rake, ARB, huge effects. And then you have diminishing, like you have more subtle effects for the dampers. And then like there's a toe in and the camber wheel we didn't talk about yet as well. The toe in is going to be tricky, dude. It's a big, that's a crazy project, dude. I think we can do a part 1 and then we do the part 2 after.
Yeah,
that's a nice idea. That's a good idea because it's getting long. It's 1 hour and 22.
Yeah.
What about bump stops? For bump stops, I'm not gonna talk about it in this video because it's a guide for beginners. If you want to get more in depth, then there will be longer, more boring videos about that that you have to go through if you want to understand everything. The bump stop. Okay. I don't want to talk about it. It's too much. Sorry. What did you say, Andrew?
Oh no, I said when I'm editing it, I'll probably start to understand it more because it gives me time to process it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Does all this apply to all drivetrains? What's a drivetrain? You mean all cars? Like front wheel drive and yes. Exactly. If dampers shave a tenth, I mean not per corner, but like dampers could be a good 5-6 tenths per lap worth of, like, if you really dial it in perfect.
So would you say as a beginner, let's say like you race for 5-6 months straight, and let's say quote unquote you have your driving technique laid out, are you able to change dampers in almost any race, or is it again very specific to certain races that allow
It depends on how advanced the car is. Like this is a Radical. It's a race car. It has dampers. I mean, the GT86 that I drove in real life is a production car that it was converted. It had some like extra parts. It had dampers in it. So I mean, all cars have dampers, but not adjustable.
Okay.
What else? Okay, dampers is out. Let's talk about wings. We have to talk about wings. Wings is important.
You did differential already, right? Or no?
No, not yet. Not really sure if we can do a differential. We might leave that for part 2.
Yeah. Okay.
So wings. What is a wing?
It's the thing on the back.
The thing on the back. Everyone has a wing. Let's do some art here. The wing. We can have on the front either a splitter or a few gurney wings or anything. You will never have this. But you can have things adding a little bit of downforce on the front tires, or you can have a rear wing. Or both. You can have a rear wing. How does the downforce levels affect the balance of the car? Essentially, we have a balance thing and we have a grip thing. So the balance, the way downforce affects balance is if you have more downforce on the front, you have more air pushing the car down and the car becomes more oversteery on higher speeds. But that's the thing. The effects of the wings get progressively bigger as the car gains speed. So you have like a super low speed corner, you're not gonna feel that much the difference. So if you have, and if you have like a flat 6th gear corner, then you're gonna feel big time the difference of wing changes. So if, for example, you have an oversteer car you have oversteer on slow corner, you're not going to change the wing. If you have oversteer on a slow corner, you change the ARB, you change the spring rate. That's spring rate. You change camber. Actually, I didn't even talk about camber yet. You change things that are going to be mechanical. But if you have oversteer on a high speed corner, on a fast corner, then you will increase the rear wing. Because on high speeds, if the car has way too much grip here, what you want to do is add more grip to this side. So just add more wing. But there's a problem. You will control the balance, right? So balance is more wing here, more oversteer, more wing here, more understeer. But there is also the speed effect. So if you add one wing here, car's balanced. Okay, actually no, it's oversteer. So let's add grip here. Boom, perfect. But now I'm getting used to it. I want the car to turn more. I'm going to add more wing at the front. 2. Yeah, okay, now it's a little bit too much. You know what? Let's do 2, 3. Every time you add wing, you're going to get more drag. So the wind pushing the car down is going to make the car slower in the straights. So things to remember about wings. It affects high speed corners a lot more than low speed corners. You might even not feel the difference that much on low speed corners. And it will slow down the car if you have too much angle. So of course, You're driving Le Mans, you want 0 wing. Now, is speed versus downforce linear? No, it's not. I don't remember exactly the formula, but I think it's pretty exponential actually. Like you get a lot more effects on higher speeds than on lower speeds. And again, like I told you, like if you want to really feel the effects on high speed corners, change the wing because it's going to be very effective. But if you change the wing on lower speed corners, it's not going to be that much. Let's test it out. Let's try. Oh, it's already on max wing. So let's try max wing with 0 wing on the front. So maximum rear wing, minimum front wing, which is the dive planes, the gurney, and I guess a splitter. So we expect this car to still be okay and rotating on lower speeds, but then it's going to be very understeery on high speed stuff. I can already feel that it's actually oversteer. Sorry, understeer. Okay, so see, still turns on that one, kind of like medium to low speed corner. But I expect some understeer in the next corner. You can see my graph. I don't know, you can probably not see my graph. But I was definitely trying to rotate the car as much as possible. Didn't happen because it's so understeer. On high speeds, there's no wing, and that's an exponential lack of downforce on the front tires. And then here, low speeds. Well, I already had overheated the tires anyways. I'm gonna understeer a lot here. See, lots of understeer. Won't rotate. Okay. Now let's try the opposite. We're gonna try to add 0 wing and max wing at the fronts. What we're gonna have. See, it's already alive. Already wants to go, see? It's pretty free. Why? Because now the faster I go, the more wing... The faster I go, the more air squared is forcing the car down. So here, you see, not a lot of oversteer there because still a low speed corner. But then here, I should expect more rotation. Right away, lost the rear on entry. Then the car like just started sliding sideways, but it did oversteer big time on entry. And there you go. So barely in the steering there. There you go.
So was that set up with the wing higher or lower?
This last one was with the wing mixed out on the fronts and minimum on the rears. Yeah. It's essentially a drift car.
When you say maximum on the front, is it are you saying at like its highest or at
highest?
Its lower?
At highest.
High.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was pointing down a lot. At higher speeds, you can feel, you know what we can do? You can do a little graph here. I'm gonna show you this for the B-roll. Right now here. So at high speeds, the faster the car goes, the bigger the arrow is on the, let me put it like this. The bigger the arrow is on the fronts, and there you go. I guess that worked. Some cars like TCR have a -1 setting that results into a minimal angle of attack when the car is running a lot of rake. It's crazy, man. That's very interesting. I can talk about that just for fun, actually. Because when you change the rake, essentially you're changing the angle of attack of everything. No, I won't talk about that. That's too much for the video. The video is already too long. Let's control ourselves. What else, Andrew?
There's wings. You said something about the
Part
toe?
1. That's part 1, man. It's too long. It's too long.
Yeah.
YouTube is gonna fire me. So we need to talk about differential, camber, pressures, toe. I think that's it. So part 2. Perfect.
I'll put the notes in there too.
Yeah, I just saved it as a part 2 as well. I'm gonna paint it this color, orange, whatever. Any questions? Did this help? Did you learn something?
Racing has so many components to it. But it's nice because it's a lot of it is.
Dude, that's the surface. That's like the surface of the surface. Nimcross learned something. Oh my god. Dude, it's an honor. How to meet Sweater in real life? Go to Sebring next week. Oh, but I think it's a closed thing. Yeah, I'm gonna be at Sebring next week. How does toe change affect mid-corner rotation? Yes, big time. I'm gonna talk to you guys. This is not gonna be the video. The video is over. Part 1. Part 2 is gonna be about other stuff. But right now, Virossi, you're gonna find it on YouTube. Exclamation YouTube. Wait, I need to follow you guys. So does toe change affect mid-corner rotation? Yeah, big time. Like if you get toe out on the front tires, mid-corner, the car rotates a little bit more. You get more turn in effectiveness, and the car is a little bit more stable on the straight. There's a cool way to explain it, but it's tricky. Like,
what's a toe?
What's a toe? Okay, toe. So toe is, see the tires are going like this? Yeah. These are my front tires. I'm a car. Vroom, vroom. Now, if I do this, I'm turning the steering.
Mm-hmm.
But if I do this, I'm adding toe. It's an alignment on the car, on the tires, on this way, on this axis.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is toe out. Oh my god, it's so difficult to explain. If you go straight, when you start turning in 1 degree to the side, the weight, when you turn right, your body wants to go straight, but the car is turning, so your weight moves to the left. Does that make sense? Inertia.
Yeah.
So, you turn right, your body goes left.
Mm-hmm.
Your weight now, when you turn right, is supported on the outside tire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we have toe like this. When you start turning a tiny bit to this side, your weight goes there. But now this tire is still kind of pointing to the outside because it's towed. So it's going to correct the car. And if it overcorrects it, now this pulls the car this direction. So in a way, the effect is it keeps the car going on a very stable straight line. Now, if you have the opposite, if you have the toe in, so toe out and toe in. Toe in on the front tires. If you turn just a little bit to that direction, your weight goes to the opposite, And then you're supported now on the tire that is pointing to the inside. So what happens? This is a very dangerous situation because now the weight is on the tire that is pointed to the inside and the car wants to continue turning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So toe in on the front tires means the car is very unstable on their braking because it wants to keep going where the weight is telling you, and you have to like keep correcting with the steering. And toe out, as soon as you start braking, the car it brakes on a straight line because both tires are trying to pull the car apart, stretch the car, and the resultant forces that are acting in the car keep the car going straight.
Mm-hmm. And do you find that a lot of people change like toe in or toe out, or is that very rare that you see those changes?
No, we have like it's normal to have toe out. So look at this, the baseline. So let's see, the baseline here has minus 2.3 toe out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for a car that's more stable in their braking. And if you go to a different setup, 2.3, 2.2, 2.3, 2.3. Yeah, you see, it's like most of it. This on the front one. The front doesn't change that much the balance of the car. Mostly for toe, what's really important is changing the toe in the rear. And it's not even available in this setup for some reason. I'm gonna use a different car, I think, for when we're gonna talk about toe, because this car doesn't have toe and it doesn't have differential as well. I'm gonna probably use a Formula 1 or GT3. They have toe and diff.
Interesting.
So yeah, now I'm just talking. I'm not recording anymore. I mean, I'm recording. This is just part 1, and we're gonna have part 2. We're gonna have part 2 very soon. So I hope this video is not too long. If you have any question, leave it in the comments down below. Make sure to gain. Oh, and remember that you can gain a 10th per lap by liking and subscribing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
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 Okay. I guess you learned a lot today.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Is your brain burning?
Yeah, because I'm just trying to I'm still trying to piece all the words together and just piece like everything one by one. Is so much.
You have to go on track and try it.
Yeah, I will. I probably will.
You have to go on track and try it. It's so much. Like, I remember spending so many hours testing stuff in ACC, in project cars, in AC, in Gran Turismo, in iRacing. I was consistently testing stuff, and building my own setups became an obsession. Like when I started coaching, I was kind of like almost famous in iRacing forums because I was posting the Formula 3 setups there, and I was like champion in Formula 3 like 3 times in a row. And everyone's like, oh, it's just setups, dude. And it was indeed my setups. There were like faster drivers than me, and I was beating them because I had better setups. Because at that level, I was already fast enough to benefit from the setups, remember?
Mm-hmm.
When will we broadcast part 2?
Probably not till the end of the month.
Yeah, late January, because Andrew is editing and then he's going on vacation. Then I'm flying to Sebring for 5 days to drive. Then I'm coming back. We're gonna be possibly still editing this video, unless we somehow cut it out today or something.
Another hour and a half.
Yeah, another hour and a half doing the cuts. So yeah, probably part 2 in a few weeks. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. I don't know. Can you make a post when you schedule it on your social media? So the thing is that I generally don't schedule it with like so far behind. It's mostly like we'll try to schedule. If we do, I'm gonna talk about it. I'm gonna make a story on Instagram. Yeah, that's a totally fair request. Oh, there's many problems with toe out. I'm gonna talk about toe in the next video. Remember, guys, setup changes are subtle. What you really want to do is change your driving. That's gonna make a bigger difference. The amount of weight on the front tires due to your braking pressures will be 15 times more important than the rate of which the spring is compressing, like big time. So remember this. Will you include a hands-on setup creation adjustment in iRacing to this series? I could do it. I could. That's a good one. At the end of the part 2, we could try it. We could try that. Yeah. It generally takes a lot of time though. Like, so if I really want to do it, I would have to, okay, let's try a series that's open setup. Let's do a bunch of laps and like, I mean, setup creation for me is like 3-4 hours, unless I'm taking a setup that is done and making some final adjustments. But it takes a lot of time. Yeah, toe in on the rear, toe out on the front. Can't go wrong with it. This creation process is what I mean. What do you mean, this creation process? Very vague question, but as a beginner sim racing on AC, what factor should I focus on? Dude, you have to chase neutral steer. You have to chase the borderline between oversteer and understeer, where the car is floating and just sliding microscopically and you're not actually losing the rear, but it's wanting to go. That's what you want to go. If you're understeering consistently and you're turning and waiting for the car to turn with the steering like stick like that, that's bad. And that's where you can gain time. You can gain so much more time by getting more rotation with less steering. That's the most important thing. That's what's gonna take you from 1 KI rating to 3 KI rating. The motor race checklist is for very beginners. Yes, I try my best to not overcomplicate things and to make it understandable to even beginners. I am very proud to inform that a lot of like beginners that were literally buying their sim racing rigs benefited from the course very well. At the same time that some 7K students also benefited from it. So that's my biggest achievement in my life, is to make a course that was complete and use the language that was accessible to pretty much the entire window of the of sim racers. Thank you so much, man. What to adjust first? Rake. Second, ARB. Third, spring rates. Fourth, wing. I mean, wing depends a lot on the track itself. So sometimes if you go to a new track and you know it's like a low downforce track, you already bring down. But I mean, if you're using a baseline that already has low wing, then it's not going to be the first thing you're going to change. It's going to be the rake anyways. Could you go over the expansion one more time? Well, I think it's called... man, I have to go. I'm starving right now. Andrew is probably starving. It's fucking... Oh my god, it's already 8 p.m. But I'm gonna try to add more details on the actual video on YouTube, so make sure you check it out. Oh, we have Nimcross dropping the codes. Man, that's amazing. Go for it. You have to try iRacing. That's the thing, man. iRacing is the rabbit hole. iRacing is it's gonna end your life. Because you get in it, and then you want to buy a better rig, and then you want to buy a better monitor, and then you want to buy a better wheel, and then that's it. That's it. But I don't know anyone that regretted it. 1 rake, 2 ARB, 3 spring rate, 4 wing. Salve do Brasil, Leandro Bedeshi. I'm gonna be driving top speed cars for 20 hours. What's a top speed car?
Huh.
Is it normal to not be Verstappen? Not necessarily, man. I think you might want to check your setup if you're not Verstappen. Tips to maintain tires on their optimal temperature. Don't abuse ABS. Don't steer too much. That's it. Don't abuse ABS. Don't steer too much. If you can get rotation without steering too much, that means you have a very nice loose setup that allows for rotation, and it don't makes you force the car. Overheating the tires is forcing the car, and this generally happens when you have a car that is too understeery or too oversteery, but generally too oversteery is not that common anyways. Okay. Guys, I have a story on my Instagram. If you reply to that story, I can give you a 25% discount on my course. That story is live for a few more hours. I just posted a video, I think. Yeah, I just posted a video on my YouTube about racecraft tips. Did you guys like that one? That one was nice. Super fun to record. I will be back. Let's see who is streaming right now on Twitch, so we can do a nice raid. So Gustavo Ariel is driving some Super Formula, I guess. Let's go, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around, and the final video is gonna be pretty fun. Remember to check it out, exclamation YouTube, and I'll be back. See ya.
See ya.
Okay, I'm gonna close the stream on the YouTube now. Yep.
Yep.